Hi everyone, in this video I will show you how to build a computer from scratch. Throughout the course of the video I will explain why I have chosen each of the parts for my build and why I am constructing the computer in the way I am. This computer is aimed to be relatively cheap while allowing me to play some modern video games. Through research across various websites and YouTube videos I was able to put together a computer that costed me at approximately $800 US AUD, my research project question was how can I build a gaming computer with just $800? So the parts I'll be using for this build for the CPU is the Intel Core i3-4170 dual-core processor. For the motherboard I'll be using the ASRock H81M HDS. For the video card or the graphics card I'll be using the Galax GeForce 960, and for the RAM I'll be using the Patriot Signature Line 2x4 gigs, so a total of 8 gigabytes. For the storage I'll be using the Patriot Blaze 240 gig SSD solid state drive, and for the power supply I'll be using the Antec VP500P, which is 500 watts, and for the case I'll be using the Fractal Design Core 1100. Now the total price for this project was $806, $6 above the original price that I aimed it to be. The CPU I have chosen is the Intel Core i3-4170, which costed at around $151 at the time of purchase. The CPU is clocked at 3.7 GHz, which means the computer will operate at fast speeds. This also means that I will be able to run modern games at average speeds. Using a CPU comparison website called CPUBoss.com, I compared the i3 to a more expensive processor, the Intel i5. The i3 is significantly slower as it has only 2 cores compared to the i5's 4 cores, but it'd be impossible to fit an i5 into the budget without compromising on another component for the computer. I originally planned to get the Intel Pentium G3258 because it was cheaper than the i3. It costed around $89 at MSY.com. However, after reading from a forum called Tom's Hardware and comparisons from CPUBoss.com, I learned that the i3 is more powerful than the Pentium because although both processors have 2 cores, the i3 has a feature called hyperthreading, which allows it to simulate 4 cores even though it only has 2 physical cores. Although the i3 is more powerful, the Pentium allows overclocking, a feature that allowing the processor to be upgraded. Because of the better performance though, I still opted to go the i3 for its superior performance. The motherboard I have chosen is the ASRock H81M HDS. After reading an article how to choose computer parts from lifehacker.com, I learned that I needed to get a motherboard that had the same socket number as my processor, which is 1150. I originally planned to get a more expensive motherboard, but after watching a video by Linus Tech Tips, I found out that the motherboard does not really slow down the performance of the computer. This motherboard also allows me to upgrade into an Intel i5 processor when I want to. Having this flexibility might be useful in the future. The graphics card I have chosen is the Galax GeForce GTX 960 at the suggestion of Jay Riches. Jay is a Year 12 student at my school who built his own computer last year. He's extremely knowledgeable in this field. I had originally planned to get the EVGA GTX 960 as it was the best performing 960 CPU. However, I still opted for the Galax 960 as it was on sale at the time of purchase at PCCasegear.com. The EVGA has a better performance than the Galax, which is why I wanted to get this in the first place. However, it was $50 more than the Galax. Comparing the clock statistics of each graphics card at PCCasegear.com shows that the EVGA has better performance, but this wouldn't really be noticeable in games as both cards are based on the same chipset anyway. In this case, I've determined that the difference between the two products was so minor that I opted for the cheaper graphics card. For the RAM, I have chosen the Patriot Signature Line 8 gigs, which is 2x4 gigs, so 2 sticks of 4 GB RAM adding up to 8 gigs. An article by Tyler Wilde, the executive editor of PC Gamer, access.pcgamer.com, explained that going with less than 8 gigs of RAM would result in a very slow computer, especially for gaming, while 16 gigabytes is too much performance just for gaming. I also chose the Patriot brand as it is very cheap. For the storage, I decided to get the Patriot Blaze 240 gigabyte solid state drive after reading an article from PCMag.com written by Joe Santo Domingo, who is the lead analyst for the desktop team at PC Magazine Labs. I learned that solid state drives do not use magnetic disks, unlike hard drives, meaning that it has faster performance than conventional hard drives, allowing computers to have better overall performance. The article also explained that SSDs have much less storage than hard disk drives, meaning that I could physically fill up the SSD, stopping me from installing any more programs or downloading any more videos. I originally planned to get a 1 terabyte hard drive, however I realized I wouldn't really use much of the space, so I still opted for the SSD. So the power supply I've chosen is the Antec VP500P. Since I have listed all the parts I'll be using for the build at PCPartsPicker.com, the website was able to give me an calculate my wattage for the system, which is around 250 watts. While I would only be using around 250 to 300 watts, I opted for a 500 watt power supply, as it would allow me to upgrade to a better processor without having to buy a new power supply. The case I chose is a Fractal Design Core 1100. I originally planned to get the Corsair 100R as it had a windowed case. However, based on the prices from MSY.com, I still opted for the Fractal Design 1100 as it is cheaper by $29, which allowed me to get a better processor and an SSD. I also like the simple design and the small size, although the small size would make it harder to build in. It is still possible to build a computer in this small space, however the very tight space behind the motherboard prevents me from rerouting the cables there, making me place the cables in a position that might obstruct the airflow in the case. All the components I have used to build, it costed $806. Just $6 more from the $800 I budgeted for the build. I have not included costs for the monitor, keyboard, mouse, etc., as I had planned to use my own pre-existing ones. If I had the necessary remaining time within the video, I would have loved to take you through step by step how to construct your own computer from scratch. Unfortunately, we do not have the time for that, so I thought I'd let you know how I went about the build. Firstly, here is the finished product, a computer produced with all the components previously mentioned. In order to build a computer, I found this YouTube video from Paul's Hardware to be particularly useful. Other videos were helpful, but not as detailed as this video. Anyone wanting to build their own computer will be able to follow this successfully. However, as with all things, you do discover other tips and tricks along the way. A YouTube video in particular by Austin Evans is far less detailed than in Paul's video, but it's more applicable to my PC build as he is using the same PC case as I am. I hope you have found this video useful in explaining how you could build a gaming computer for just $800. Please see the other references that assisted me in my research as well. Thanks for watching. While these two YouTube videos were excellent, I feel that further clarification is required in these areas. One thing I found interesting as why we need to install the power supply on the PC before the other components. The two videos mentioned that it was very important to do this. However, this other video explains that it is important to ensure that the PC is grounded, not running static electricity, so that none of the parts get fried. If the PC wasn't grounded, static electricity would be generated from your pads and pass on to the parts, damaging the components. A viewer might also find it useful to have more detail around the way that the SSD installed within a Fractal Core 1100 case. The process is shown in an Austin Evans YouTube video, but is it clear that to install the SSD on the vertical hard drive tray, you first unscrew the 3 screws holding the vertical hard drive bay, then remove the rubber grommets, unscrew the screws holding the vertical tray into the case. Now the tray is removed, the SSD holes are aligned with the holes of the tray and then screwed into place.